courage over comfort. It sounds simple, almost like a motivational catchphrase, but in reality, it is one of the hardest choices we will ever have to make. Every day we are presented with a fork in the road, one path lined with safety, familiarity, and the reassurance of the known. The other, it's unpredictable. It asks us to risk, to stretch, to be seen, and to step into something that might not work out the way we planned. That second path is the one that leads to our calling. But let's be honest. Most of us spend a lot of time standing at the crossroads, trying to talk ourselves into taking the leap, while every part of us clings to what feels safe. Choosing courage over comfort isn't just about grand life-changing decisions. It's about the small, everyday moments where we have the opportunity to show up fully as ourselves. It's saying yes to the invitation even though we feel unqualified. It's speaking up in a meeting when our voice shakes. It's sharing our work, our ideas, our dreams, knowing that some people won't understand or approve, and yet we do it anyway. One of the biggest myths we tell ourselves is that we have to feel brave before we take action. We think that courage comes first and action follows, but that's not how it works. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward despite it. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll be waiting forever. Readiness is a myth. There will never be a perfect moment when all the fear disappears and confidence takes its place. The only way to become courageous is to practice it moment by moment, decision by decision. But let's be real, stepping into your calling will be uncomfortable. It will stretch you in ways you didn't expect. It will require you to let go of old narratives about who you are and what you are capable of. And here's the hardest part. It will invite you to be seen, really seen. Not the carefully curated version of yourself that you present to the world, but the real, flawed, work in progress version. That's terrifying, because when we are seen, we open ourselves up to criticism, rejection, and failure. But we also open ourselves up to connection, impact, and growth. And that's what our calling requires of us. There's a story we all tell ourselves that keeps us stuck. The idea that other people, the ones who are really living out their purpose, don't feel fear like we do. We assume that they have something we don't. More confidence, more talent, more clarity. But the truth is, they've just learned to move through fear instead of letting it stop them. They have chosen courage over and over again, even when it felt impossible. What would happen if instead of trying to avoid discomfort, you leaned into it? What if instead of waiting to feel certain, you took action while still feeling unsure? What if the very thing you've been resisting, the thing that makes your stomach flip and your heart race, is actually the doorway to the life you've been craving? Stepping into your calling in 2025 isn't about making some grand sweeping change overnight. It's about making one courageous decision at a time. It's about taking the stage, sending the email, signing up for the class, making the ask, or sharing your story. It's about being just brave enough for just long enough to take the next step. You might fail. In fact, you probably will at some point. But failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it. Every person who has ever stepped into their calling has faced rejection, setbacks, and moments of self-doubt. The difference is they kept going. They chose courage even when it didn't feel good, even when it didn't make sense, even when everything in them wanted to retreat. And because they did, they built something bigger than their fear. So the question is, which path will you take? Will you stay where it's comfortable, where you are safe from judgment and failure, but also safe from real growth? Or will you choose courage? Will you show up for yourself even when you don't feel ready? Will you stop waiting for permission and decide that 2025 is the year you finally answer the call on your life? It's not about whether you feel ready. It's about whether you're willing. And if you are, you won't just step into your calling. You will step into the person you are always meant to be. The story we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of shapes every single decision we make. Whether we realize it or not, we all have an internal narrative, a voice in our head that has been crafted over years of experiences, expectations, and beliefs. Some of those stories empower us, pushing us toward growth and opportunity. Others hold us back, whispering doubts and limitations into our minds, convincing us that we are not enough, not capable, not worthy. And here's the hard truth: until we take control of that narrative, it will control us. Owning your story is one of the most powerful things you can do, but it's also one of the hardest, because to own your story, you have to look at it honestly. You have to acknowledge the parts of it that are painful, the moments where you felt small, the failures that still make you wince, and the wounds that haven't fully healed. You have to confront the labels you've carried, some given to you by others, some you gave yourself. Maybe you've been told you're not a leader. Maybe you've convinced yourself you're not creative. Maybe a past mistake has made you believe you'll never be successful. These stories, whether spoken or unspoken, shape your identity. And when you believe them, you live according to them. But here's the good news: your story is not set in stone. It is not something that just happens to you. You have the power to rewrite it. You get to decide which narratives you will carry forward and which ones you will leave behind. You get to challenge the beliefs that no longer serve you and replace them with truth. You get to step into the version of yourself that you were always meant to be. So ask yourself, what stories have I been telling myself? Are they stories of strength and possibility, or are they filled with limitations and fear? When you think about stepping into your calling, what is the voice in your head saying? Is it telling you that you are capable, worthy, and ready? Or is it filling you with doubt and hesitation? Often, we don't question our own narratives because they feel like facts. If we've been telling ourselves for years that we're not smart enough, not brave enough, not talented enough, those beliefs become deeply ingrained, but they are not facts. They are simply thoughts we have repeated so often that they feel like truth. And the only way to change them is to disrupt them, to intentionally choose new, empowering beliefs to replace them. That's not easy. It requires daily, conscious effort. It requires catching yourself in moments of self-doubt and challenging the voice that says, you can't do this. It requires rewriting the script in real time and saying, actually, I can. It means refusing to let past failures define your future potential. It means reminding yourself over and over again that you are capable of more than you think. Owning your story also means taking responsibility. It's easy to blame our circumstances, our past, or other people for where we are. It's easy to say, if only I had more support, if only I had more confidence, if only things had been different. But waiting for the perfect conditions to step into your calling is just another form of procrastination. The truth is, no one is coming to rewrite your story for you. No one is going to hand you the confidence, the opportunity, or the perfect moment. You have to decide that your story is worth owning and that you are worth investing in. And here's something else to remember. Owning your story doesn't mean you have to have it all figured out. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. In fact, embracing imperfection is part of the process. When you own your story, you give yourself permission to grow, to make mistakes, to learn, and to evolve. You recognize that your worth isn't tied to how flawless your journey looks, but to the fact that you are showing up, doing the work, and refusing to let fear dictate your future. So what would happen if you fully stepped into the truth of who you are? If you stopped apologizing for taking up space, if you stopped letting past failures, old labels, and outdated beliefs define you, what if instead of shrinking, you decided to own your story with confidence, knowing that every experience, good and bad, has shaped you into someone with a unique purpose? When you rewrite your narrative, you don't just change your own life. You change the lives of the people around you, because when you stand in your truth unapologetically and wholeheartedly, you give others permission to do the same. Your courage to own your story might be the thing that inspires someone else to own theirs. And that is what stepping into your calling is all about. So in 2025, make the decision. Stop waiting for permission. Stop letting old stories define your new season. Step forward boldly and fully and own the life that is meant for you. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. We tend to think of it as weakness, as something to be avoided, as an exposure that could leave us wounded. But in reality, vulnerability is the birthplace of courage, connection, and purpose. If you want to step into your calling in 2025, you have to be willing to be vulnerable, because nothing meaningful happens without it. Every big step you've ever taken, whether it was applying for a job you weren't sure you'd get, telling someone how you truly feel, or putting your work out into the world, required vulnerability. It required you to take a risk not knowing how it would turn out. And that's why vulnerability is so terrifying. It comes with uncertainty. It invites the possibility of failure, of rejection, of criticism, but it also invites growth, possibility, and transformation. You cannot have one without the other. We live in a world that tells us to armor up, to be tough, to hide the parts of ourselves that feel tender or uncertain. We are taught that strength means never letting them see you sweat, never admitting when you're struggling, never showing anything less than total confidence. But that version of strength is a lie. Real strength, the kind that changes lives, comes from the willingness to show up even when we don't have all the answers. It comes from standing in front of the world and saying, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm here to do. And yes, some people may not like it. Some people may judge or misunderstand you. But vulnerability isn't about controlling how people see you. It's about owning how you see yourself. One of the biggest reasons people don't step into their calling is because they are afraid to be seen trying. They don't want to look like a beginner. They don't want to fail publicly. They don't want to admit that they don't know exactly how things will unfold. But here's the truth. No one starts as an expert. No one begins their journey with all the answers. Every person you admire, every leader, artist, creator, or innovator you look up to has had moments of deep uncertainty. They have had times where they doubted themselves, where they stumbled, where they felt exposed and afraid, but they did it anyway. They chose vulnerability. What would happen if you stopped waiting to feel fully prepared before you took action? What if, instead of hiding your uncertainty, you embraced it? What if you allowed yourself to be a beginner, knowing that every step forward, even the messy, imperfect ones, are part of the process? Vulnerability is also the key to deep connection. Think about the people in your life you feel closest to, the ones you trust the most. Chances are they're not the ones who pretend to have it all together. They're the ones who let you see their real selves. They're the ones who have shared their fears, their failures, their dreams with you. And because they have, you feel safe doing the same. That's the power of vulnerability. It builds bridges. It fosters trust. It allows people to see that they are not alone. And here's the thing, your calling is not just about you. It's about the people who need you to step up, the ones who need to hear your story, your perspective, your truth. But they can only connect with you if you're willing to be real. If you're willing to show them not just the polished, curated version of yourself, but the whole picture, the struggles, the fears, the lessons learned along the way, because that's what inspires people, not perfection, but authenticity. So in 2025, make the choice to show up as you are, not as the person you think people expect you to be, not as the perfectly put together version you wish you could present. Just you, imperfect, learning, growing, trying, because that is enough. In fact, that is more than enough. That is exactly what the world needs. Stepping into your calling will require you to be vulnerable, to take risks without guarantees, to share your work without knowing how it will be received, to speak your truth even when your voice shakes. But the alternative, hiding, playing small, staying in your comfort zone, will never lead you to the life you were meant for. So the question is, are you willing to be seen? Not just when you have it all figured out, not just when success is guaranteed, but right now in the messy, uncertain middle of your journey. If you are, then 2025 won't just be another year. It will be the year you step fully into who you were always meant to be. We live in a world obsessed with perfection. We celebrate flawless performances, highlight reels, and success stories that seem effortless. Everywhere we look, there's an unspoken message. Get it right the first time. Don't fail. Don't stumble. stumble, be perfect, or don't bother at all. But the truth is, perfection is an illusion, and worse, it's a trap. It keeps us stuck, afraid to take risks, afraid to make mistakes, afraid to even try. If you want to step into your calling in 2025, you have to let go of the idea that you need to be perfect. You have to replace it with something far more powerful, resilience. Because resilience, not perfection, is what will determine your success. Resilience is what allows you to keep going even when things don't go as planned. It's what allows you to learn from failure instead of being defeated by it. It's what separates the people who make their dreams happen from the ones who let fear stop them. The reality is you are going to fail at some point. You are going to put yourself out there and get rejected. You are going to take a step forward and fall flat on your face. You are going to hear no, make mistakes, face criticism, and feel like quitting. And that's okay, because failure is not a dead end. It's part of the process. Think about the people you admire, the ones who have done something meaningful with their lives. That is the name of just and a whole lot of eyes with the teacher. That is the name of just a whole lot of people. Do you think they never face setbacks, doubts, or detours? Of course not. The difference is they didn't let those moments define them. They didn't stop when things got hard. They didn't let failure convince them that they weren't capable. They kept going. They adapted. They learned. And because they did, they grew stronger. Resilience is about getting back up every single time. It's about refusing to let one failure, one mistake, or one rejection be the reason you walk away from what you are meant to do. It's about understanding that setbacks are not a sign that you should quit. They are a sign that you are growing. But here's the challenge. Resilience is uncomfortable. It asks you to sit with failure and learn from it instead of running from it. It requires you to have tough conversations with yourself about what went wrong and how you can improve. It forces you to admit when something didn't work and try again anyway. That's hard. It's far easier to avoid the discomfort altogether, to tell yourself that maybe this wasn't meant for you, to retreat back into what feels safe. But safety doesn't lead to growth. Comfort doesn't lead to purpose. And if you're serious about stepping into your calling, you cannot let the fear of failure keep you from taking action. One of the biggest barriers to resilience is shame. When we fail, we don't just feel disappointed. We feel like we are the failure. We attach our worth to our success. And when things don't go as planned, we convince ourselves that we are not good enough, not talented enough, not worthy enough. But failure is an event, not a reflection of your identity. One failed attempt does not define you. One setback does not mean you are not capable. The only thing that truly defines you is what you choose to do next. So what if instead of fearing failure, you saw it as feedback? What if instead of seeing setbacks as signs that you should quit, you saw them as signs that you are on the right path? What if instead of aiming for perfection, you aimed for progress? Resilience means showing up even when you don't feel like it. It means trying again, even when you're tired, even when you're discouraged, even when it feels like nothing is working. It means trusting that your efforts will add up over time, even when you don't see the results right away. But resilience isn't just about endurance. It's about learning. It's about taking every failure, every misstep, every challenge and using it to get better. It's about asking yourself, what did this teach me? What can I do differently next time? How can I grow from this? Because the people who succeed are not the ones who never fail. They are the ones who use failure as fuel. So in 2025, I challenge you, stop chasing perfection. Stop waiting until you feel completely ready. Stop telling yourself that you have to get everything right the first time. Instead, commit to resilience. Commit to showing up. Commit to learning. Commit to trying, failing, and trying again, because every time you get back up, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than your setbacks. Your calling is not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. And if you can embrace resilience, if you can choose progress over perfection, you will not only step into your calling, you will own it. One of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is that we have to do it alone. That stepping into our calling is a solitary journey, that we have to figure it all out ourselves, that asking for help is a sign of weakness. But the truth is, nothing meaningful is built in isolation. Every great leader, every artist, every entrepreneur, every world changer, you name it, has had a community around them. A network of people who believed in them, supported them, challenged them, and reminded them of who they are when they started to forget. If you want to step into your calling in 2025, you have to surround yourself with the right people, because who you spend time with will either push you forward or hold you back. Think about the voices that fill your life right now. Are they voices of encouragement, voices that remind you of your potential, voices that challenge you to grow? Or are they voices of doubt, voices that keep you playing small, voices that make you question whether you're capable? Because whether you realize it or not, the people around you shape the way you see yourself. If you're constantly surrounded by negativity, by people who don't believe in your dreams, by those who discourage risk and celebrate comfort, it's going to be hard, maybe even impossible, to step fully into the life you were meant to live. But here's the good news. You get to choose. You get to choose who you allow into your inner circle. You get to choose who has influence over your thoughts, your mindset, your energy. And that choice, it's one of the most powerful ones you will ever make. You need people in your corner who will remind you why you started when you feel like giving up. People who will hold you accountable, not just to your goals, but to your highest self. People who will challenge you to think bigger, push you past your comfort zone, and call you out when you're selling yourself short. You need people who see you not just for who you are today, but for who you are becoming. And let's be honest, finding those people is not always easy. It requires effort. It requires vulnerability. It requires you to actively seek out relationships that align with your vision. Because if you don't, you'll default to whatever is easiest, whatever is familiar. And sometimes what's familiar is the very thing that's keeping you stuck. Maybe that means letting go of relationships that no longer serve you. Maybe that means creating boundaries with people who drain your energy. Maybe that means stepping into rooms where you feel like the least knowledgeable person there, because that's where you'll grow. Maybe that means joining a mastermind, finding a mentor, or connecting with people who share your values and aspirations. And here's the other piece of this. You also have to be that person for others. It's not just about surrounding yourself with the right people. It's about being the kind of person who lifts others up, who supports their dreams, who challenges them to be better. It's about building relationships based on trust, mutual encouragement, and shared growth. Because here's the thing, your calling is not just about you, it's about impact. It's about how your gifts, your work, your purpose influence the people around you. And when you're in alignment with your calling, when you are fully stepping into what you were meant to do, you create a ripple effect. Your courage gives others permission to be courageous. Your commitment to growth inspires others to grow. Your willingness to bet on yourself encourages others to do the same. And that's why community matters so much. Because when you surround yourself with people who are also chasing purpose, who are also committed to growth, who are also stepping into their calling, you don't just rise alone, you rise together. You push each other forward. You remind each other of what's possible. So if you're serious about stepping into your calling in 2025, take a look at the people around you. Ask yourself, are these relationships helping me grow?